you swear affirm the testimony you shall give the court, the jury, and the trial in this case, give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do, sir. Just please state your first and last name and spell your last name loudly, please.
James Gann, G-A-N-N.
Could you please tell our jury where you're employed?
I'm a sergeant with the North Charleston Police Department, City of North Charleston.
And how long have you been with the North Charleston Police Department?
A little over 19 years, sir.
And what is your current assignment?
My current assignment is Day Shift Team 1, South Bureau, Shift Supervisor.
And was that the same position you held in April, or on April 4th, 2015?
Yes, sir.
And did you have the occasion to be on duty that morning about 9:30 a.m.?
Yes, sir, I was.
Were you team supervisor just for the South Bureau that morning?
No, sir. That morning I had the responsibilities of my squad plus Day Shift Team 1 Central as well.
And who was generally the sergeant for Day Shift Central?
Sergeant Webb is Day Shift Central Sergeant.
And where was Sergeant Webb that morning?
He was on annual leave, sir.
Is that unusual for a sergeant to have to be able to cover two zones? Or
No, sir.
two bureaus?
No, sir.
That's kind of par for the course.
Yes, sir. We kind of look out for each other. Yes, sir.
What bureau was Michael Slager attached to?
Officer Slager was attached to Day Shift Central Team 1 under Ron Webb, Sergeant Ron Webb.
So he was not normally under your supervision?
No, sir. No, sir.
But he was this morning?
On that morning, yes, sir. He was under my supervision.
And could you tell our jury what you were doing that morning about 9:30?
Approximately 9:30, I was conducting a traffic stop on Dorchester and Scarsdale at the gas station right there on the corner, Dorchester and Scarsdale.
Okay, and that was in South Bureau, is that correct?
Actually, it's Central Bureau, sir.
So you were actually in Central?
Yes, sir.
And what happened while you were involved with that traffic stop?
As I was running my driver's information, I heard over the radio Officer Slager conduct his traffic stop, and a few moments later I heard him in a foot pursuit.
Okay. So you were not real concerned about just the traffic stop, is that correct?
I was aware of his general location, yes, sir.
Okay. But you did become, you paid more attention, should I say, when he called the 1080, is that correct?
Yes, sir. When he declared that he was in a foot pursuit, tones dropping from the dispatcher, and then I discontinued my traffic stop.
Okay. And so you discontinued your traffic stop, and what did you do?
I proceeded to Officer Slager's location.
And what route did you take to assist Officer Slager?
I left the parking lot of the gas station, Dorchester Road, took a left onto Montague, entered the on-ramp connector between International and Montague to get back on 526 to Rivers Avenue.
Okay. Now, while you were en route to the general location, did you receive any information via the dispatch or radio regarding a more specific location for you?
Yes, I did. Just for clarification, I asked, exactly, what the address, the cross-reference for Craig Street was, because I was getting confused with another street.
Okay. And were you aware of the location on the yellow driveway behind?
Yes, sir. I'm familiar with the area.
That was broadcast over the radio as well, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And after that, what was the next radio transmission you received?
The next transmission I heard from Officer Slager was that taser deployment.
Okay. And after that?
Second taser deployment, and then, he declared that he discharged his firearm and he took his taser.
Now, when you were told about this yellow driveway behind the pawn shop, did you know what they were talking about?
I knew it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Do you know approximately how long it took you to get to that location?
No, sir, but I was told I got there fairly quickly for the distance I traveled.
And is this location in Charleston County?
Yes, it is.
And how did you actually get back to the yellow driveway? You come in from the Craig Street side or the Rivers Avenue?
No, sir, I came in off of I came off of Riverside, Rivers Avenue side. I cut through the parking lot of the Goodwill Training Center and the Gerald's Tires and the Laundromat and Marie's Diner. There's a little alleyway that goes parallel to the yellow driveway to the vacant lot.
And if I could just refer you to State's Exhibit number 1.
Yes, sir.
If you would, just tell them from what direction you were coming, where you turned in, and how you got back to that field and where you parked your car.
526 is off the picture down this way. I came in off of Rivers here. I cut through the parking lot through that exact driveway, or I'm pretty sure it's that driveway. Cut across the parking lot, entered here in between the two buildings, went down this road, took a left onto the driveway, and my vehicle ended up right about here.
Okay. And that, of course, was depicted on your dash cam video, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Excuse me.
I'd like to play you a portion of State's Exhibit number 2. This would be the camera from your cruiser, is that correct? And, one second. That building right in front of you would be Marie's Diner, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
Let me ask you, did you happen to see this fella standing right there as you were coming up?
Not when I was driving in, no, sir.
Those two officers over to the left as you were driving up, or who?
Officer Habersham and Officer Slager.
You were the third police officer there on the scene, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What did you do after parking your cruiser?
I went to my trunk of my vehicle, got my PPE kit, which contains some first aid supplies, and went to aid Officer Habersham with administering first aid.
And who assisted you in tending to the victim?
Officer Habersham.
Had the victim's shirt been removed?
As I approached, Officer Habersham was removing the shirt.
Do you know how he removed his shirt?
I couldn't tell you if he had a pair of scissors or a knife. I just know he was,
And was the victim face up or face down when you arrived on the scene?
he was face down.
Was he still cuffed?
I do not recall.
And what injuries did you notice on the victim when you arrived?
I noticed some gunshot wounds, what appeared to be gunshot wounds, yes, sir.
To what area of the body?
There was one in the collarbone area, up in the shoulder area, and to the side and to the back. I believe he had one to the lower buttocks area. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Do you recall which side, whether it was left or right?
Not exactly, sir.
Any taser bars? Observed any taser bars in them?
I don't recall.
Now, what was the victim's condition when you began tending to?
He was unresponsive.
Was he ever responsive at any time that you were there?
No, sir.
Did you observe any breathing?
No, sir.
Did you observe a pulse?
No, sir.
What did you do when you were unable to locate any vital signs?
We turned him over, and I started chest compressions.
And chest compressions are part of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
Where was Officer Slager while y'all were tending to Mr. Scott?
He was off to the side.
And do you know who he was with?
Initially, he was with Sergeant Webb, after Sergeant Webb arrived on scene.
And briefly, I'd like to direct your attention to States 237. Could you just identify all the folks in that picture? If you can.
It's Officer Habersham kneeling on the ground. That's me approaching with my PPE kit. Officer Slager with his back to us, and Sergeant Webb with his hand on Officer Slager's shoulder.
And just to be clear, when you saw States Exhibit 2 previously, you driving up and stopping, that is your car, and you depicted in States Exhibit 237.
Correct, that's my vehicle, department issued vehicle, 227.
Did you notice Sergeant Webb taking Officer Slager's gun at that time?
No, sir, I did not.
How long did you continue with the chest compressions?
Until I was relieved by EMS. I couldn't give you an exact number.
And at any time, were there any signs of life from Mr. Scott?
No, sir.
Do you recall seeing anything else in the area of the body while you were attending to him?
I do, sir. I remember seeing a cell phone near the head of Mr. Scott, and I believe there was a taser cartridge somewhere in the area, but I can't remember his name.
And what did you do after you were relieved by EMS and North Charleston Fire Department?
Took a step back, went over to where Officer Slager and Lieutenant Bowman were, and stood by there for a moment.
Okay. Now, at some point, were you present when Lieutenant Bowman asked Officer Slager what happened?
Yes, I was.
And where was Mr. Slager at that point? Sergeant Webb's vehicle or Lieutenant Bowman's?
I remember Lieutenant Bowman's vehicle.
And do you recall what Officer Slager said when he was asked by Lieutenant Bowman what had happened?
Yes, sir.
And if you could, what did he say?
He went through the traffic stop. He said he observed a vehicle with a tail light out, conducted a traffic stop, and they pulled into the parking lot of Advance Auto. Subject exited the vehicle. Officer Slager directed him back into the vehicle, which at that time the driver complied. He made the initial contact, collected the vehicle information, driver's license. As he went back to the vehicle and started to run the driver's information, subject exited the vehicle, and that's when the foot pursuit started. He continued to chase him down Craig Street, turned into the vacant lot behind the Money Man, and deployed. Yes. Deployed his taser for the first time. Taser did not have the desired effect. Mr. Scott continued to flee into the vacant lot. He re-engaged him with a taser and a second cartridge. At that time, Mr. Scott fell down, and he went to apply the handcuffs to him, and that's when they started fighting over the taser. And during the time they stood up, pointed the taser at him, and that's when he deployed his department-issued firearm.
Okay, so he said, who stood up?
They stood up.
Okay. And who did he say had the taser when they stood up?
Mr. Scott.
And what did he say Mr. Scott did with the taser after he stood up with the taser in his hand?
Pointed it at him.
And what did he do when Mr. Scott pointed the taser at him?
He deployed his department-issued firearm and discharged it.
And what had happened with Mr. Scott when he fired the weapon?
That's as far as the statement goes. He didn't go into any further detail about that.
He didn't tell you that the driver went down and then he handcuffed?
Correct, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, he did. I apologize.
Did y'all have any reason to believe that Officer Slager had done anything wrong with that?
No, sir.
Was he under any kind of investigation?
No, sir.
At any time during this recitation of what had occurred, did he indicate that he had been assaulted by Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir.
In what particular?
When he went to initially handcuff him after the taser deployment, the second taser deployment, Mr. Scott turned on him and started fighting with him over the taser and started fighting on the ground.
They were struggling over the taser, is what he told you, right?
They were fighting, yes, sir. That's,
Okay. Well, when you were fighting, tell me specifically what he said that indicated they were fighting. Did he say that he was punched by Mr. Scott?
no, sir.
Did he say that he was kicked by Mr. Scott?
No, sir.
Did he say that he was stood upon by Mr. Scott?
No, sir.
Did he say that he was scratched by Mr. Scott?
No, sir.
And basically that he and Mr. Scott were struggling over the taser.
Yes, sir. They were struggling over the weapon. Yes, sir.
And of course, have you been tased?
Yes, sir, I have.
Because you're kind of a taser guru there at North Charleston now, aren't you?
I am the master taser instructor. Yes, sir.
And being drive stunned by a taser, how does that feel?
Doesn't feel good, sir.
It hurts, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, sir.
It's not incapacitating, but it hurts.
It depends on if there's a barb, like a 3-point hookup like we discussed in our interviews. It can cause incapacitation with a drive stun.
Correct, but just a normal drive stun is not incapacitating.
No, sir.
Could potentially be also if they get them on the neck cavity, is that correct?
If there's a brachial stun, and yes, sir, it can incapacitate you.
Okay, but your typical drive stun basically hurts like that.
Correct, sir.
And would it be normal for Mr. Scott to try to get himself out of that pain if that were occurring?
Any subject would try to get away from pain. Yes, sir.
Now, based upon what you were told by Officer Slager at the scene, what was your understanding considering the proximity of Officer Slager and Mr. Scott at the time that the shooting took place?
My understanding was that Mr. Scott had the taser, and they were fairly close together. Yes, sir.
Right on top of one another, correct?
Within 3 or 4 feet. Yes, sir.
And based upon what you were told by Officer Slager at the scene, was it your understanding that that Mr. Scott was approaching him with the taser outstretched?
Yes, sir. That's what I believed.
After hearing Officer Slager's account of what happened, what did you do afterwards?
At that time, Lieutenant Bowman took Officer Slager away. I stayed on scene to assist with marking evidence, helping the evidence evidence technicians set up a tent because it was raining over Mr. Scott, marking different evidence throughout the area, looking for blast doors and what we call aphids that comes from.
So y'all weren't really obligated to do that because y'all don't generally get involved in officer-involved shooting cases?
No, sir. We just wanted to mark evidence so nobody would mess with it.
Okay, and what is protocol for investigation of officer-involved shootings?
Protocol is, first thing we do is make the notifications to the command staff, and then the next notification would be going to SLED because SLED would be investigating the shooting, not us.
And what was the goal?
That's loud.
Did I scare y'all?
No, sir.
I'd like to play you a portion of State's Exhibit number 3, if I could, sir. This is Officer Sergeant Webb's dash cam, and could you identify that fellow that just walked in front of the car?
Could you please back it up a little bit, please? I didn't
I
see.
can.
Appears to be Sergeant Ron Webb.
Okay. Who is the normal sergeant for Officer Slager, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
I'd like you to continue watching this if you would, sir. Who is that walking up from the right side now where Sergeant Webb is? Would that be you?
Yes, sir. That's me. Yes, sir. That's me. I couldn't tell because of the raindrops.
And what are y'all looking for over there on that side of the car?
I tell you the truth, I don't recall. I don't.
Would it be possible y'all were trying to find shell casings?
That could be possible, sir.
Because that would be closer to where the body is located. That's an important question.
Objection sustained.
So you indicated earlier y'all were looking for evidence. That's what y'all are doing now?
Yes, sir.
And do you know what Sergeant Webb appears to be doing now when he's marked?
No, sir, I do not.
Now, what did you observe anything in the roadway while you and Sergeant Webb were looking for evidence?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was that?
There was a hat, a wallet, and a watch.
Okay. Your Honor, we would offer State's Exhibit number 74, I believe, without objection. That's correct.
Submit it.
And if you would, use this, and if you would stand up to the one that's on screen, and if you could, point out your car and point out where the hat and watch were and what all those little white things are over there to the left of that.
This is my cruiser, unit 226. The wallet, watch, and a hat. There were some shell casings right here. This is where Sergeant Webb was placing some of his business cards.
Okay.
So there were some shell casings here. I'm not exactly sure what's there.
Okay. And Mr. Scott's body would be located where
if you go off picture, his body would be more over here, this area.
Now, did you observe any evidence of taser deployment while you were there?
Yes, sir, I did.
And in what, how many and in what locations?
Again with the pointer, or?
I don't think it actually shows on
Okay.
here, but
There were blast doors, which were green. They're very bright colored green.
what
And
does
they're
green designate, by the way?
just the type of cartridge it is by foot. How big of a lead that you have, plus they're extended probes, which means the barb itself is a little bit longer.
Okay. And then, and just for point of reference, different blast door may mean a shorter wire.
And a different probe, yes, sir.
And where did you, how many taser deployments did you see evidence of while you were out there?
2 taser deployments, 2 cartridges.
And where were they roughly?
There was one generally, you see the 2, well, it's gone. There was
We can
one,
put it back up if you want.
okay, well,
74.
if you see toward the front,
You can use that thing to just show them.
back this way, can you give me a larger picture? Back in this area,
Right at the very beginning.
right at the beginning of the entrance there, there were 2 blast doors and aphids, which were the anti-felon identification tags that indicated there was a deployment here.
And
Close.
and if you would, since you mentioned aphids, would you tell our jury what an aphid is?
An aphid is a it's a piece of paper that's got a micro printing of the serial number of the cartridge that it was in. So each cartridge is identified by the aphid, which would have the same serial number on the cartridge as would the aphid itself.
And to lack of a better term, aphid's kind of like confetti, right? Like shoots
Yes, sir.
Confetti out?
Yes, sir. It's batting. If you think of a shotgun shell that had batting in it,
Okay.
that helps project the
Okay.
probes itself.
And did you observe any second deployment?
Yes, sir. About in this area here, there was another cartridge, blast door, and some more aphids in this general vicinity, right around this light pole, somewhere right in here.
And did you observe any taser rollers?
I don't recall at this time, sir.
Okay.
How many more minutes do you think you have for this?
That might be it right there, Your Honor. Let me check with my cookhouse. I think that would be a good place for me to stop.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch. We'll take an hour and a half for lunch. Have a good lunch. Please do not discuss the case. All right, sir, we need you back at about 2:30 or so. Please do not discuss your case with anyone during lunch.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll be in recess for an hour and a half.